Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our NFL Playoffs Conference Championship prediction episode. We are down to 4 more teams and 2 more games before we know who the matchup will be for the 2023 Super Bowl. Man, is it getting exciting. But before we jump into those predictions, just a quick update on our head-to-head pick'em game. Callan and I were tied going into last week, but we had 3 games picked differently. So we knew someone was going to take the lead. And that someone did end up being Callan. He got 3 of his 4 games correct, while I only shot 50%, going 2 games out of the 4 correct, putting us at a total score of Callan with 194 and me with only 191. So Callan has had an impressive run through the playoffs, to say the least. You went 5 for 6 last week in the wild card, and then 3 for 4 in the divisional round.
Yeah, I only missed that Jaguars game, which was a really good game. It was close to it. I almost called it a fourth quarter comeback. He almost had it.
A few dominoes fall the other way in that fourth quarter, and the Jaguars pick up that win. So I went in. I got the regular season win and went in feeling pretty confident. But Callan has absolutely dominated, to say the least. But I'm only down by 3, and games this week are worth 4. So I have the chance to regain that lead. Speaking of those 2 games, let's jump right into it, starting with the NFC Championship, which will be played Sunday at 2 p.m. Central, which is the 2-seed 49ers heading to Philadelphia to take on the 1-seed Eagles. And we disagree here. I have the Eagles in this one. Callan has the Niners.
Yeah, and it kind of goes against my old saying of a team from the West Coast going to the East Coast to play an earlier game. You know, you can't trust that. But, you know, this has an Iowa State quarterback leading the way, so maybe he's not used to as much as the jet lag, but we'll see. It'll come down to that that 49ers defense and what they're able to do against that Eagles offense, and especially coming down to that in that second half, where in the second half of games, the 49ers have held teams without a touchdown for the last 7 games, including the playoffs.
That's crazy. That 49ers defense and DeMeco Ryans have just created an absolute juggernaut beyond proportion. But I have the Eagles in this one because they're a pretty damn dominant team themselves and have been able to prove it for long spans of times, just like the Niners have, Niners are on a 12-game win streak, which is insanity, but the Eagles are on a pretty damn good win streak themselves. What I really think it's going to come down to is, I don't think Brock Purdy played bad exactly last week, and I am a fan of Brock Purdy. I do like what he's been able to do in San Francisco.
Like him better than Jimmy G.
I like him a hell of a lot better than Jimmy G, that's for sure. But Brock Purdy did show some cracks in his armor last week when the Cowboys were able to generate some pressure, and that was probably the first good defense he's faced as a starter. And the Eagles defense is just as good, if not even better than that Dallas defense. Especially that defensive line. The Eagles have led the league pretty much throughout the entire season in sacks, total sacks as a group. So you really start putting some pressure on Brock Purdy, you can see that 49ers offense borderline fall apart, kind of like it did against Dallas. I mean, they had a lot of great situations when Dak threw interceptions, and were only able to come out of it with a field goal. That's not going to happen with the Eagles. You're not going to get those free interceptions like you did from Dak.
No.
Jalen Hurts is going to play well, and they're going to put up points. So it comes down to Brock Purdy being able to match and put up those points as well, which is something he's never really had to do, especially against a really good defense like the Eagles. So I actually kind of see the Eagles. I see this game being close in the first half, but the Eagles really starting to run away with it in the second half, which is a flip of the script from what the 49ers season has been so far.
Yeah, and I think as long as they keep it close, the 49ers will have a chance. And I don't think that Purdy will have to score that many points, in all honesty. I think this is going to be a low-scoring defensive battle where that Eagles defensive line kind of dominates the 49ers offense, and then the vice versa for the 49ers defense and their defensive line and their linebackers. dominating kind of the Eagles or the Eagles offense. And I could see this being like a 10-6 or a 13-7 kind of game where just one play breaks a team's way. Maybe that's a muff punt or a fluke fumble, something like that's going to break one team's way. And I think that's going to be the difference maker.
Yep. When you see two very evenly matched teams like we have here in the NFC Championship game, special teams ends up playing a huge role. So I totally agree. A muff punt or a big turnaround, maybe a missed field goal or something along those ends, could end up playing a much bigger role than it would in a usual game. One thing I'm going to keep an eye out on is that 49ers defensive line has been able to generate some immense pass rush, but they haven't gotten a ton of looks against rushing quarterbacks this year. And I hate to jump it all the way back to week 1, and I don't think this is overly a correlation, but just an interesting thing to note is, at least in my head, the last time I can think about that they faced a true rushing quarterback like you see in Jalen Hurts was Justin Fields against the Bears, who ended up going for over 100 rushing yards against them and being one of the Niners' only losses of this entire season. So, like I said, it was a really long time ago, so don't look too far into that. But it is just a small point that I would like to mention.
That was 3 quarterbacks ago for the 49ers.
Quite literally 3 quarterbacks ago, yeah. So next up, we have our AFC Championship game, which we played Sunday at 5:30 Central, with the 3-seed Cincinnati Bengals heading to Kansas City to take on the 1-seed Chiefs. And we agree in this one, we both have the Bengals.
Yeah, until the Chiefs can beat the Bengals, I mean, it's kind of starting to feel a little bit like Belichick and the Jets. I mean, until you can prove you can win, you're going to keep getting picked against. The Bengals played one of their best games, I feel like, last week. They're continuing to be a hot team. That receiving duo of T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and has now added Hayden Hurst to the lineup, who had a huge game last week. And I just think that it's going to be too much for the Chiefs to overcome, especially with Mahomes being limited with that injury. It's a high ankle sprain, which I think that if it's a regular season game, he misses this week because, I don't know, it seems to be the injury of the year this year. There's a lot of high ankle sprains I noticed this year. And I don't know, maybe they'll look at that this offseason and maybe it's just a fluke deal. But it seemed to keep guys out for at least a couple weeks when that injury would happen. And I know this is a playoff game. It's a different atmosphere. And I think that he plays because of that. But I think he'll definitely be limited and he could be very, very vulnerable to re-injuring that ankle as well.
I completely agree. I hate to echo it, but Callan hit almost every point I wanted to talk about. The Bengals have won the last 4 matchups between these teams, 2 of them being in the postseason, 2 of them being in the regular season. So until the Chiefs prove that they can beat the Bengals in primetime, it's just hard to not pick the Bengals. And I don't think this is going to be the time that they prove that they can beat them, because they have so much stacked against them. They are at home, which of course really helps them. But when you have your quarterback having those problems and chance that he doesn't even play, and he's definitely not going to play 100%, you have some other people on your team a little banged up, you're going against a team who just came off of one of the biggest wins maybe in their entire time as an organization. That was a huge win by the Bengals. I mean, a lot of people had the Bills against them. They said the Bengals were still kind of a fluke team, and they proved that they not only were better than the Bills and deserved to be here more than the Bills, but they were dominant over the Bills. And I could really see a similar thing happening here in Kansas City, especially if Mahomes comes out and re-aggravates that injury and he's limping around the entire time on offense. That means the Chiefs aren't going to be able to put up points. I don't think that the Chiefs defense is going to have any sort of an easy time stopping the Bengals from putting up points. I don't think we're going to see like a complete blowout, like 20-plus point win, but I think that we could see a very solid 10-plus point win for Cincinnati.
I feel like it's a 28-14, 31-17 kind of game.
Certainly. Yep. So those were our predictions for the 2 conference championship games. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button. But until next time, don't forget
to eat the W.